Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are here from Bangladesh Civil Society. We'll present some of our demands, the outcome we are expecting out of this COP, and of course, beyond COP. We have a concept note, a presentation to start with. We'll listen from Soed Aminul Haq, the overall demand from Bangladesh Civil Society, how we want the climate negotiation to carry on, and then we'll have reflections from two other discussions.
Thank you, moderator, and good afternoon, journalists and guests. Though we are Bangladeshi civil society has participated in press conference, but our perspective is global because we are focusing the issue of Bangladesh, but our demand is from the COP29 is a global perspective. So I will read a paper on this demand. Dear journalists, covering the COP29, greetings. We, the CSO from different countries, have gathered with an expectation saving our planet from climate crisis. We are experienced with multifarious devastating climate impact of heat wave, unprecedented cyclone, flood around the world. This phenomena imperatives for an urgent action to reduce global temperature. We would like to leave behind all incomplete and frustrated negotiation outcome happened in the past and hope to have a realistic, transitional and equitable outcome from the COP29 in Baku. Dear journalists, the COP29 is being considered as a finance COP. That means here we all decide to future financial strategy fighting climate change. This is an opportunity for reality check on how we are progressing, where is the gap, and what will be our role and contribution setting appropriate financial supporting technique to achieve the target. Achieving the safe temperature goal 1.5 degree and support to LDC, MVC for their adaptation and survival. We believe that leaders from developed countries and key developing nations have the capacity to address the issues and concern effectively for saving the earth beyond their profiteering ideology. Following the hopes, we want to draw some of our expectation from the negotiation in Baku. Number one, we expect and hoping for 1.5 degree temperature goal for ending the fossil fuel. The latest emission gap report 2023 said that world is witness at least 86 degree with high temperature that exceeding the 1.5 degree Celsius pre-industrial level this year. This has been happened due to failure of controlling and reducing greenhouse gas by the big emitters countries. They also expressed their concern in the report that the implementation of unconditional and conditional NDC will increase the global temperature from 2.6 to 2.8 degree by this century. Therefore, to get it back on track, global annual greenhouse gas emission gap must be narrowed, and this will be possible by continuously strengthening mitigation action for this decade through reducing emission by the target stipulated time. We expect and believe that developed country party with a big emitters have capacity to give a real emission reduction pledge now and following the upcoming GST in 2025. COP29 established a clear timeline for transition away from fossil fuel and phase out all coal-based energies. We expect that COP29 must deliver a clear timeline for transitioning away from fossil fuel, leading to complete phase-out and clear reflection thereof in NDC 3 2025. It must deliver a strict decision on immediate phase-out of all coal-based power plant and fossil fuel subsidies. Finance. We have faced a bitter experience from developed countries in mobilizing the 100 billion climate finance with a huge level of overdue amount, cumulative. And now, a new financial strategy is on the table of discourse in the name of new collective and quantified goal on finance, that is NCQG, which will be finalized this year from this negotiation, we think. The NCQG introduced lack of clarity and some points particularly in interpreting and clarifying the terms collective. This is very important issue where the uncertainty and risks are there. The uncertainty has become more visible while examining the US position last year on the NCQG, and this is running and ongoing the discussion. According to their interpretation, the finance mobilization and align not necessary to depend on the donors. Rather, it should come through a national process, then consider the other process. This is indicating that US and their allies must exert the pressure to the LDC MBC in the name of collectivism, and such process is indeed alarming. Apart, we observe a very little progress has been made in the run to COP29. Parties' disagreement made us frustrated in real sense because who should pay, how much should pay, this is absolutely obscure at present. In this context, we are reiterating the Paris Agreement Clause 9.3, where developed countries will take the lead for mobilizing necessary resource, finance from wide variety of sources, but never make responsible the LDC MBC in the process of resource mobilization. Our expectation is in this regard. We demand a clear definition of climate finance through UNFCCC. This is very important to avoid the dubious role of developed countries for their double counting activities and to monitor reporting and verification with a transparent climate finance from both sides of the donors and recipient implementers. The NCQG must explore new percentage of GNI, gross national income, of GNI target for climate finance above the existing ODA. We are observing that the developed country resolutely fell below their climate financing promise and further indebted the developing country, poor country, and MBCs giving the loan in the name of climate financing. This is extremely unfair, and instead of supporting the MBCs, developed countries are crippling MBCs' capacity to cope with the next shock of deepening their poverty. In such a context, developed countries must be promised to climate finance as ODA under the NCQG process, followed by Article 4.3 UNFCCC Convention. The financing will be ensured and delivered at public finance from a percentage of their GNI, which will outweigh the existing ODA 0.7%. We demand separate NCQG for mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage financing. The very less financing we observe in the sector of adaptation and L&D sector, loss and damage sector, creating the MBCs more vulnerable, also depleting their capacity to prevent the resilient building actions. This is being happened due non-recognize the MBC's core problem, adaptation, to show their inaction of developed countries to support effectively to adaptation, loss and damage sector, so that NCQG must address the need, MBC, and develop NCQG accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Aminul. So, guys, I'm sure that most of us would agree that we are, excelling in every possible worst way. Last year the spending on war was $2.3 trillion, and we are talking. The developed countries are talking about $100 billion per year, and of course, the civil society all over the world, we urge that every year at least $1 trillion should be funded to manage mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage needs. So before I reflect further, I would now ask Mr. Abul Hassan to say a few words.
Thank you. Greetings, all my friends. First, I want to say, look, a climate finance will go in vain unless global warming keep to 2 degrees Celsius. We all of know that climate is changing. So this is very important to keep the temperature that degrees. So we want to say some word regarding our NCQG. new quantified goal. At first, I want to say NCQG financing study should be focused to meet 1.5 degree Celsius pathway. And this is must adopt with thematic sub-goal, specifically mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage fund. NCQG should prioritize grant first, then highly conscious financing and resource mobilization responsibility must be polluter countries. In the name of collectivism, we not cannot be forced to financial contribute to poor and vulnerable countries. And new collective quantified goals, finance must be aligned with the human rights and gender responsive approach. This is as well as I want to say some issues that existing global financing non-commensurate with the need of MVC. Because of, in the perspective of Bangladesh, we see that, last 20 years, 185 disasters happened average in Bangladesh, and average financial loss 3.7 billion per year, according to the Global Risk Index. Bangladesh is the most climate vulnerable, that, and Bangladesh need 18.24 billion per year to implement some long-term and short-term plan. So, but we observe that Bangladesh last 10 years get only 1 billion or below. So we want, specifically we want to say climate finance based on equity, justice, and humanitarian framework based. And of course, it is grant-based, not loan. Thank you from my side.
Thank you, Hassan. So, yes, we are talking about this new finance deal, new collective quantified goals. So, Mr. Aminul told that it is important that we define the collective. What is the collective thing in this? And of course, when you talk about climate finance, the world has now agreed that there will be 3 different streams, but that needs to be interconnected: the mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage stream. And each of those are important, and we do not undermine the importance of mitigation. That has to remain the key to tackle climate change, and everybody has a role to play. However, the role is not similar. It's not the same role everybody can play. Everybody doesn't have the capacity, and everybody didn't do the same level of harming to the world we live in. And that is why we re-emphasize that the developed countries take the share of the development work, the development path they adhere to, and change the development path, and also help or assist the developing countries with both technology and finance. Next, I'll ask Mr. Partho Hefaz Sheikh to reflect.
Thank you. Journalist, you have heard from my colleagues from the Bangladesh Civil Society about finance. Let me just dig in a bit into that. We know that the insecurity is there. The base is 100 billion and 1.2 all trillion dollars. But on this side, we also need to understand that we have a GGA, and the indicators are there. So basically, various things, and as my colleague Joy was saying, mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage. So how all this comes together needs to be very well defined. Particularly looking into NCQG and GGA, we now have indicators, and definitely those indicators have to be met. And how the funds from the NCQG is utilized to meet those indicators is something that the whole UNFCCC, the whole negotiation needs to look into, clarifying the ways and the paths and the means how those indicators are going to be met. So that is something which definitely needs all of our attention, and we hope that the negotiators, the parties, provide that kind of detailed analysis to it. The other thing that I really want to focus at is loss and damage. When we talk about, and side by side, my colleague has also talked about DRR, how we really differentiate between DRR and emergency response and really loss and damage funds. Because we who are in the DRR and the emergency response things that we have done, these two are ideologically in the thoughtful and in principles, these are two different things. So really how we are looking into this, and those kind of stark realities of humanitarian response, where we talk about immediate needs of the vulnerable people who have been in various vulnerabilities, and their assets has been damaged, as opposed to the loss and damage. So basically, those things really needs to be thought out, discussed, and we really need a better conclusion to all that. Lastly, I think when we talk about climate crisis, it's a water crisis. And it's even a women's crisis. If you talk about Bangladesh and the third world, where mostly the potable water is the responsibility of women of the household. So he was also talking about these funds being gender transformative. So we really need to look into all these, that how these funds, whatever that we provide to countries, the vulnerable countries, really are also gender transformative, and looks into loss and damage in the way, the principle that it has to. It looks into how the GGA indicators are met, because we are going to agree to some of it in some time. So these are things that we hope from the Bangladesh civil society, the negotiators, really start discussing and going digging down, and things of one world. It's only one world that we live in, and we have to think about that. So crossing boundaries and looking into all the vulnerable people of the world. As my colleague, when he said, definitely we are part of the Bangladesh civil society, but definitely we're talking for all the vulnerable people that there are. Thank you, and definitely if you have questions, we can look into this.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So we know that we had the GST outlined last year. Now we have the tools and mechanism to measure how we are faring, or at least how we have fared thus far. Now, if we do not have a finance deal this year, I'm saying if, because of course we are hoping that we'll have a finance deal, a deal which will meet our expectation. We laid out our expectation to you. And if you do not have this deal, there will be no purpose of those NDC. And frankly speaking, the developing countries cannot lay out a revised, renewed NDC without the finance in place. That is the main thing. And if you think that last year, you remember those connotations, phasing out, phasing down, right? I mean, we don't want to hear any more of this phasing down. We really want to emphasize that please agree on phase out. Define a timeline. Define how the technology is going to, replace the business as usual power sector. Please, but this is kind of now or never. We keep saying that every year, But still, I feel that more and more we have come to agree that this is really important. That we take this, very coordinated effort throughout the world, where every one of us take a collective responsibility according to our capacity. Another few things that is important, that came out from the keynote is that, when you talk about this compensation, when you talk about adaptation or mitigation, we have to bring out the humanitarian aspect, right? And when you talk about human rights, the gender-just approach must be considered on all our planning and action. And not only gender justice, the intersectionality. That is very important because we have seen the rise of popularists all over the world. There is a kind of a majoritarian rule all over the world. The voices of the people who are minority within their groups, maybe politically, racially, ethnically, are being less heard day by day, and that is why we urge the global leaders that they do not only talk about finance, do not only talk about technology, but also make sure that the finance and technology are delivered in a gender-just manner. We have a few minutes. We'll take some reflections and questions. I think we have another 6 minutes. So reflections and questions, anything from the audience? Anyone? Anyone has any question or reflection? Anu, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Sila from Afghanistan. You just talked about the role of gender in tackling climate change.
Is it on? Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
You just talked about the role of gender in tackling climate change. So I was wondering what approach would you give when it comes to gender climate justice, particularly in the case of Bangladesh. I know that in South Asia, women actually take care of a huge part of household in financing their household. So it's important, of course, for gender climate change justice. But the question is, how would you address it and what approach would you suggest? Maybe for Bangladesh, but also for South Asia in general. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, of course, the measures could vary from country to country, region to region, but however, there's kind of few things universal. One is, of course, women's education. And education is a must because that gives them the way to have economic power, right? And that's the path to independence, so kind of emancipation for women. And that is why, I mean, many might challenge it, but we still feel that women's education should be at the top forefront. Someone like from Afghanistan, you are from Afghanistan, and at the same time, there are many other things. For example, land rights in South Asia. All over the world, but especially in South Asia, women probably have, maybe at best 7 to 8% of land ownership, right? Now, 92% of the land is owned by men. So those are the areas. So those are policy issues, right? So there might be policies, but the policies are not being implemented properly. Had the policy been implemented properly, the women should have at least possess 50%, right? So it's only 7 to 8%. So land right, women's education, and at the same time healthcare and everything. So Partho Bhai was telling how women are overburdened with the traditional role for fetching water and things like that, caregiving and everything. So there needs to be change, and change not only in the policy sphere but also in the family, in the society. It has to happen concurrently. One cannot happen after the other. So that's very important. You wanted to reflect?
Yeah, right. So one thing is definitely sure that the gender roles needs to be changed. The way that we think. Interestingly, we are all male in the dais. We 4 male, but definitely, the gender roles needs to be transformative. Plus, the woman needs to be at the forefront of in non-traditional roles. So that is something that many of us sitting here, in Bangladesh, there are ample examples of how women has taken, greater responsibility, transformative roles within the society, going into business, and a lot of other things, And so these are things that definitely, as you were saying, the policy needs to be there. But when we talk about finance, this is a finance corp. How those policies, if they need to be implemented, are funded properly. The fund goes to the right people, women at the right time. And he was also talking about skills. So the right skills has to be provided to people so that, the economic empowerment and all that comes into play.
Thank you. Thank you, Partha. I think we have one question from this gentleman. Yeah.
Hi, this is Dr. Shakil Hayat from Pakistan. My question to all of you, particularly to Partha sir, is about when we talk about the gender responsive climate finance, so are you referring to the practical gender needs or the strategic gender needs? So if you are referring to the strategic gender needs, then we are talking about the policy inclusion, the gender inclusion in all kind of policies. But if we are referring to the practical gender needs, for example, as an organization promoting WASH around the globe, we are most inclined towards the practical gender needs, so that the gender-specific practical needs need to be incorporated in all kind of development activities, and that need to be financed. So I want to...
I will take that, actually. It has to be both to start with. It has to be both practical and strategic needs that we need to take care of. So you talked about the practicality. Strategically, it is important that the policies, plans, and the finance flow cater to the needs of women, or not only women, but also other gender, ethnic community, and everyone as a whole. This is why, probably you have heard there has been an initiative of multi-actor platform of climate disaster risk financing in 9 or 10 countries of the world. It is being funded by BMZ. It is a kind of a platform where the organizations are trying to capacitate the local civil society organizations and women, so that they have kind of this strategic and institutional mechanism to get access to climate finance. Thank you very much.